The first thing Ines noticed was the silence. They had just rounded the final bend of the winding dirt road that led into San Ermano. The rental car creaked with protest as Roffa eased it over a series of cracked stones. Beyond the windshield, the village shimmered under a bleached southern sun, white stucco houses clustered like forgotten bones atop a scrubby hill. From a distance it looked peaceful, quaint, even. But as they drove past the faded Bienvenido sign, she felt it, the hush. No birds, no wind, just the tires on gravel and the rhythmic creak of Miguel's foot tapping impatiently on the floorboard. "Is it just me?" Teresa murmured from the back seat. "Or is this place kind of dead?" Roffa chuckled. "It's old, rustic. It has charm." Miguel leaned forward. "It has no Wi-Fi. That's what it has. God, we're going to be stuck in 1890 for a week." "You're the one who picked this topic," Ines replied. "Folklore and vanishing traditions, remember? You're lucky I convinced Professor Duarte to even approve this trip." The village's central square was barely large enough to turn the car around. A dried-up fountain stood at its heart, and above it, at the highest point of San Ermano, the chapel loomed, cracked and flaking, with a half-collapsed bell tower that looked as though it might fall at the next strong breeze. Higher still, above the chapel and tucked into the cliff face like a scar, the silhouette of the old monastery stared down. A ruin. Nothing more than stones and old rumors. A stooped woman swept a doorstep nearby. She didn't look up as the group got out of the car. They had booked rooms at a family-run guest house owned by Señor Almeida, one of the few permanent residents left. He was waiting for them on the porch, smoking a stubby cigarette and eyeing their backpacks like they might carry gold or trouble. "Lisboetas, eh?" he grunted in Portuguese. "Come to find ghosts?" Ines smiled politely. "We're university students, Señor. We're doing research on local legends, superstitions, oral traditions, for our anthropology thesis." He spat into the dust. "You're not the first. You won't be the last. Just don't go knocking where the doors are nailed shut." They laughed, assuming he was joking. The rooms were clean, if musty. After a simple lunch of olives, bread, and tomato stew, they split up. Teresa and Roffa headed to the village square to interview a 93-year-old woman who was, according to Señor Almeida, the last keeper of old songs. Miguel wanted to hike to the cliffs and take drone footage of the monastery ruins. "I'll be fine," he said, slinging a bottle of water and a camera over his shoulder. "I'll be back before dark." Ines stayed behind to organize their notes. The village seemed empty now. No voices, no barking dogs, just the slow ticking of a clock in the hallway and the occasional creak of old wood shifting in the heat. Around 5, Roffa and Teresa returned, visibly rattled. "She sang to us," Teresa whispered, visibly shaken. "The old woman, Dona Luzia. She sang the death bell song. Said she hears it some nights. A chime that no one else hears. Says it means someone's going to vanish." Ines frowned. "It's just a song. Symbolism. You know how folklore works." But by 7, Miguel still hadn't returned. They tried his phone. No signal. By 8, dusk crept in, and the village turned ghostly, shadowed, indistinct. Señor Almeida grew impatient with their worry. "You warned him," he said, lighting another cigarette. "No one goes up there after sunset." "Why?" Roffa asked. He just stared. "Ask Dona Luzia. She's the only one who still talks about it." They did. It took convincing, but the old woman finally opened her shutter again and peered down at them from her second-floor window. "The bells," she rasped. From the monastery. They used to ring for prayer. But they broke. Collapsed. 50 years ago. Still, sometimes, when the fog rolls in just right, we hear them. Like echoes. Ines asked. Dona Luzia shook her head slowly. No. Like warnings. No one who hears them sleeps again. And no one who goes to find them comes back whole. They laughed again. Nervous, this time. Then, sometime after midnight, Ines sat bolt upright in bed. Outside, in the distance, through the mist swirling over the hills, she heard a sound. A bell. Faint. Hollow. Ringing once. Twice, 3 times. Miguel was still gone. By morning, Miguel was still missing. The villagers, what few of them there were, offered no help. Some wouldn't answer their doors. Others muttered in dialects too thick to understand, shaking their heads and closing shutters. Señor Almeida had already made his stance clear. He went to where he shouldn't. You can follow, but I won't dig more graves. You think he's dead? Teresa asked, her voice cracking. They hadn't slept. The mist had hung around long into the morning, thicker than ever, blanketing the hills in a wet, silver fog. No, Ines replied sharply, forcing calm she didn't feel. He's probably just lost. The monastery ruins go on for 1/2 kilometer. Maybe he fell, twisted an ankle, and couldn't get back. Roffa pulled out a folded topographic map. We'll go together. We head up the chapel path and stick together the whole way. No wandering off. No splitting up. They packed supplies, water, flashlights, rope. Teresa hesitated by the old stone crucifix at the edge of the village square before finally catching up. The path to the monastery was steep, cutting through terraced olive groves now overrun by weeds and dead shrubs. Lizards scattered beneath dry stones. The sun tried breaking through the mist but failed, and all around them, the cliffs swallowed sound. Their shoes crunched over centuries-old cobblestone, and the only other sound was Roffa humming nervously under his breath. The monastery, when it came into view, was worse than any of them expected. Walls buckled outward like the bones of a collapsing rib-cage. Vines strangled what remained of doorways. On the western side, an archway had fallen incompletely, revealing an old crypt entrance, sealed shut with stone and rusted chain. There's no way he went down there, Teresa said, stepping back. Let's check the bell tower, Ines said. Maybe he tried to climb it for signal. But the tower had collapsed decades ago. All that remained was the base and a shattered staircase that led nowhere. The roof above it had caved in, leaving behind gnarled wooden beams and a draught that whistled as though the building itself breathed. They shouted Miguel's name. Again. Again. No answer. Just as Roffa was about to suggest heading back, they found something near the east wing, Miguel's backpack. Torn open. A cracked lens from his camera lay nearby. Teresa dropped to her knees, picking up a frayed notebook from the grass. This is his. Inside were his usual sketches, notes about stonework, and a map he'd begun drawing of the ruins. On the last page was a single line, scribbled so violently it had torn the paper. I heard it. It was above me. They all went still. What was above him? Roffa asked. Don't, Teresa snapped. Let's go. Now. They retraced their steps, but the fog had shifted. Paths they knew looked different now. The turn by the moss-covered statue? Gone. The fork by the olive press? Missing. A dry well that hadn't been there on the way up stood directly in their path now, leaning at an angle like a broken tooth. We're not lost, Ines insisted, but her voice was high-pitched, brittle. We just need to get down to the chapel and follow the path. Do you hear that? Roffa whispered suddenly. They all stopped. Somewhere, not far, came the sound of a bell. Not a church bell. Not a clear, joyous chime. This was warped, sickly, like something hollow being struck under water. Teresa began crying. No, no, it's not real. She said they don't exist. It's an echo, Ines said. A geological anomaly. This place is full of caves, maybe. But even she stopped. Because this time, the bell was joined by something else. The sound of footsteps. Heavy. Dragging. On gravel. Ines turned and shined her flashlight behind them. There was nothing. They broke into a run. It took them 2 hours to find their way back. When they stumbled into the village square, covered in dirt and panic, the mist had cleared and the sun was already dipping toward the horizon. Dona Luzia was waiting. "You heard it, didn't you?" she asked quietly from her window. None of them answered. She nodded slowly. "You should leave." "We're not leaving without Miguel," Ines said. Dona Luzia looked away. "Then you won't leave at all." They stayed. None of them said it out loud, but guilt kept them there. Guilt and something colder, something unnamed, lurking in the pit of each stomach. The sense that leaving now would mean accepting Miguel was gone forever. That if they ran, they might never know what happened. That night, Roffa locked their bedroom doors from the inside. "We stick together," he said firmly, dragging a dresser in front of the window. "We sleep in one room. No more solo bathroom trips. No more exploring." Ines sat on the edge of the bed, staring at Miguel's cracked notebook. The last line haunted her. "I heard it. It was above me." She flipped to the sketch he'd drawn, crude outlines of the monastery. On the upper corner, nearly hidden, was a note he'd scribbled faintly in pencil. 2 bells? But there was only ever one. "What do you think it means?" Teresa asked softly, curled up in the corner with a blanket pulled to her chin. "Why would he write that?" "I don't know," Ines whispered. "But I think maybe he thought someone was up there. With him." The wind picked up. A window groaned somewhere in the guest house. They heard a soft knock, but when Roffa checked the hallway, no one was there. They slept poorly. At 3:17 a.m., Teresa sat bolt upright, gasping. "I saw him," she whispered. "I swear to God, I saw him." Roffa and Ines were immediately awake. "Where?" Ines asked. "Outside. By the chapel. I saw his jacket." He turned and looked at me. His eyes. Something was wrong with his eyes. "Are you sure it wasn't a dream?" "I'm not insane." They ran to the window. The chapel was dark, barely visible. No movement. No figure. Just stillness and fog creeping along the rooftops like something alive. In the morning, they confronted Señor Almeida. "You saw Miguel," Ines said. "You just won't admit it." "I didn't see a damn thing. You know what's happening in this village. You all do. The bells, the stories." "The bells are just stories," he snapped. "No one's heard them in years. People only say they do, because it gives them something to believe in when things go wrong. It's the cliffs, the wind, the echo." "Bullshit," Roffa interrupted. "You believe it. That's why you warned us. That's why no one leaves their houses at night." The old man looked away. "I believe in not tempting things best left alone." They tried to report Miguel missing, but the nearest working phone was 20 kilometers away, and none of the villagers were willing to drive them. The only cab company that served the area didn't answer their calls. So they stayed. That afternoon, Ines decided to search Miguel's room again. She had gone through his things twice already, but couldn't shake the feeling she had missed something. The room was clean, untouched since he left. The smell of old fabric, sun-warmed stone, and cedar hung thick in the air. Dust motes floated in the light, cutting through the lace curtains. Then she saw it. A hairline crack in the wall behind the bed frame. Curious, she moved the bed. There was a wooden panel behind it, poorly nailed like a rushed patch job. "Roffa!" she called. Together, they pried it off. Behind the panel was a hollow space. A crawl space, maybe once a priest's hiding hole, now just a pocket of darkness. Inside, there was a bundle of cloth. They pulled it out. A robe. Not Miguel's. It was old, faded, with an ecclesiastical cut, a monk's robe, marked with a symbol they didn't recognize. Sewn into the sleeve was a rust-colored smear. Blood. Dried. At the bottom of the crawl space, they found something else. A small bell, cracked down the side, still attached to a frayed length of rope. Roffa held it up. Why the hell would this be hidden in the wall? When he touched it, it made a sound. Not a full chime. Just a soft ting, like a tooth being tapped with metal. Far above the village, the monastery bell, the one that no longer existed, answered with a distant, trembling ring. Teresa screamed from downstairs. They ran. She was standing at the foot of the stairwell, pointing upward. "He was there," she said, shaking. "He was at the top of the stairs. Just now. Miguel. But he looked wrong." They stared at the staircase. It was empty. Then, from somewhere upstairs, a second bell rang. They didn't sleep that night. Teresa refused to leave the downstairs hallway, sitting cross-legged with a knife from the guest-house kitchen clutched in both hands. Roffa paced. Ines sat at the dining table, staring at the cracked bell they'd pulled from the wall, turning it slowly in her hands. Outside, the fog returned. But this time it didn't roll in from the cliffs. This time it rose from the ground, like smoke. By 2 a.m., it had seeped through the window frames and under the doors. The whole house felt colder, quieter. Roffa opened the door once, just a crack, and immediately slammed it shut again. "There was someone standing out there," he whispered. Ines didn't ask what he meant. She already knew. "I think this village is a trap," she said softly. "Not like someone planned it that way. Like it became one." Roffa frowned. "What are you talking about? Did you notice there are no birds? No animals? Even insects? Just fog and silence and memory. Like this whole place is feeding on grief. On what we leave behind." She looked at him. "It took Miguel. But he didn't die. I think something else is using him now." Teresa whimpered in the corner. "He looked at me, Ines. But he didn't see me. His mouth moved, like he was trying to say something. But it wasn't his voice." Roffa sat down. "We have to destroy that bell. Or ring it," Ines said. They all turned to her. "What if it's a signal? Like a key. Maybe the bell doesn't summon anything. Maybe it opens something. Maybe that's why it was hidden, to keep the doors closed." "Doors to what?" Teresa whispered. But they knew the answer. Everyone did. The monastery. At dawn they left the house, wrapped in jackets and scarves, the bell hidden in Roffa's backpack. The fog was thinner now, but it clung to their legs like desperate hands. The village was still, windows shut, doors barred, the air heavy with the weight of things unsaid. As they climbed back up the winding trail, every step felt harder, like they were walking deeper into something, not up from it. The monastery watched them come. It looked different this time, or maybe their eyes had changed. Shadows seemed to cling to the walls, and as they stepped through the crumbling threshold, a pressure closed around their lungs. Inside, the air smelled of dust and rusted incense. No birds, no wind, just silence, until the bell rang. Not theirs. The other one. Clearer this time. Closer. They followed it, deeper into the ruins, past the fallen archways, through what must have once been a library or prayer room. Moss grew in the cracks of ancient stone. Time stood still here. Then they found the source. A second bell. Larger. Hanging impossibly from a wooden beam still somehow intact in the apse. Its rope swayed gently, untouched. Beneath it knelt Miguel. He didn't look at them. He was praying, or whispering, or maybe just mouthing words that no longer meant anything. His eyes were open but vacant. Ines stepped forward. Miguel. He blinked. His head tilted slightly. "I came back," he said. But the voice wasn't his. Teresa gasped. Roffa stepped in front of her instinctively. Miguel's body twitched, jerked. Then he stood up slowly, painfully, like he hadn't moved in days. His neck turned with a sickening crack. "The fog forgets nothing," he said. "It remembers what you lost. It becomes what you mourn." Ines held out the cracked bell. "Is this what it wants? Is this what called you?" His lips parted in a faint smile. "That bell is not for you." Then something screamed. Not Miguel. Not any of them. A sound that filled the monastery like floodwater. Shrill, unhuman, like the metal of the old world tearing open. Roffa pulled the cracked bell from his bag and threw it hard against the stone floor. It shattered, and the world tilted. The fog rushed in from all sides. They were thrown backward. Light and darkness danced at the edges of their vision. They heard Miguel scream, once, and then silence. When they came to, the monastery was empty. No bell. No Miguel. Just stone and dust and sunlight breaking through the collapsed roof. 3 days later, back in Lisbon, Ines sat alone in the university library, playing back the recordings from their trip. Most were static, wind, ambient noise. But one file, one they didn't remember starting, began to play a sound. A bell. One long, slow chime. And then Miguel's voice. Whispering, almost inaudible. "I found the door. But I didn't close it."